Welcome back to the Omnibuds Cafe. My name's Kevin, and today we're going to take a look at Preacher by Garth Ennis, art by Steve Dillon, and 70 some amazing covers by Glenn Fabry. So grab your cup of coffee and let's check out this book. All right, here is Preacher, the 25th anniversary omnibus edition. It says DC Black Label, but you can widely ignore that. This is a Vertigo title through and through. This is a 2 omnibus set. We'll take a look at both. Pretty good size, but before we get into it, let's take the dust jacket off because we're not animals. All right, let's dig into Preacher Omnibus Volume 1. I'll try to keep this fairly spoiler light. It is a pretty old story. Garth Ennis, Steve Dillon, they've worked together numerous times on this, on Hellblazer, and of course on Punisher. Steve Dillon's art's fantastic. So we get a table of contents, an intro by Brian K. Vaughan, and let's get into this. So what is Preacher all about? So this is Jesse Custer, and he is down on his luck, confused, heavily drinking preacher down in Texas. And we get to learn a little bit more about him and his friend Cassidy, who we'll meet here soon, and the love of his life, Tulip O'Hare. So the first story arc in here is called Gone to Texas. And it tells the story of Jesse Custer being possessed by Genesis. Now, what the hell is Genesis? So Genesis is the offspring of an angel and a demon who fell in love and had a child. And in heaven, that's not allowed. And they're both punished for having done so. And Genesis, the offspring, kind of rivals the power of God. And Genesis escapes his prison and goes down to Earth looking for a soul because it has no soul or anything. We'll meet this character later. His name is Arseface, appropriately named. So Genesis enters the body or the soul or the mind of Jesse Custer, this preacher, and gives him the ability to basically speak with the word of God. And when he does so, people have to listen to him. So as Jesse kind of learns more about what this Genesis entity is and what's going on, he sets himself on a mission of finding God, who has left heaven, knowing that this angel and demon fell in love and had this offspring that rivals his power. God essentially quits and leaves heaven. And Jesse, being the southern preacher that he is, that is not okay with him. So again, he teams up with his ex-girlfriend. Here he is using the word of God, so it'll always be in red. What's really cool about that is it's a plot device, but they don't lean on it too heavily. Like, he doesn't use it all the time. He doesn't think he has to. This character here, who we're going to meet multiple times throughout this story, is the Saint of Killers, and we'll learn a little bit more about him. But Jesse and Tulip also bump into this Irish, swearing, drinking vampire named Cassidy. And him and Jesse become best friends pretty quickly. So the story is all about, what's going on in Texas. The government authorities are after him. These agents from heaven are after him. This religious sect called the Grail is after him. Everyone wants to understand what is going on with Jesse Custer and speaking this word of God. So early on, the friendship between Jesse and Cassidy, this vampire, kind of grow. But Jesse's on the run from a lot of people, number one of them being the Saint of Killers. And they end up traveling to New York. Cassidy's got this old friend who they think might have an idea of where God's hiding out on Earth. This friend ends up being a little not what they thought he was. Here's Jesse again using the word of God. So then, at the end of this arc, we get into the next arc, which is until the end of the world, and this is we get a little more backstory on Jesse's upbringing and his father and his mother, and what happened to his father. His father ends up dead. His mother's presumed dead. What was it like growing up in Texas? I think on like the east side of Texas, almost, whatever the hell state's next to it, probably Louisiana or something. And growing up in this rigid, kind of weird sect of Christianity that's, not a very great place to grow up. But he grows up with his grandma, and his mom and dad live with them on this farm, and their job is to produce preachers. So Jesse's captured by these two guys that work for his grandmother and brought back to their farm or their ranch or whatever it is, and they want to keep Jesse and make him do his preaching. Well, because this is Jesse's story, this is really awesome. So, fuck communism. Zippo lighter. If you've ever read Why the Last Man, that shows up in Why the Last Man. And the main character of that story is kind of explaining, he's like, I don't know, I saw it in a comic book one time. Really awesome kind of callback between two stories. So as they close out this arc, we move into the next one, which is called Proud Americans. And we learn a little bit more about Jesse's father. Jesse's father was in Vietnam. And we learn about how he met his mother. And this book's absolutely crazy. And I'm trying not to give away too much, but you're going to see a lot just by watching the panels here. It's quite over the top. We meet this character here whose name is Herr Starr. He is a German kind of former military guy who joins this religious group called the Grail. And we'll learn a little bit more about the Grail, this organization that is kind of planning this second coming with what they believe is the Messiah or the bloodline of Jesus Christ. And it's absolutely crazy. So the Grail is chasing, and really that's kind of the main part of this story, is the Grail versus Jesse as Jesse's on this hunt for God. So Cassidy gets tortured. He's kind of held in this place in France that is the Grail's base. Jesse, on his way to help Cassidy, bumps into this guy at the airport who used to serve with his dad, and he learns a little bit more about his dad because his dad dies when he's very young. And this is a really cool part of this story. But again, the Grail and Herr Starr, they have Cassidy held captive because originally they thought he was the one holding on to Genesis, but that's not the case. But Jesse and Tulip are on their way to save the day. So the next story in this arc is called Dixie Fried, and things get a little weird with the friendship between the three of them, Jesse and Cassidy and Tulip. And I don't want to give away too much, but there's a little friction building between Cassidy and Tulip. They travel to New Orleans because Jesse is kind of on this mission to learn more about this Genesis thing. He doesn't know a lot about Genesis. And here's this character is Daranique or Daranique. I don't know how to say it. It's very French, but he's the leader of this Grail organization, while Herr Starr is kind of in charge of the operations of it. So as they travel to New Orleans, he's looking for like some voodoo specialist who's going to maybe help him learn a little bit more about what this Genesis thing is doing in his head. We get another story, and I think we're almost there. We get a little backstory on the Saint of Killers. What's really cool in this book, and a lot of long stories do this, they'll kind of break away from the main title and tell some backstory on characters. When they do that in this book, they're called preacher specials, right? So we'll get an issue on Jesse's backstory. We'll get an issue on Tulip. We'll get an issue on Cassidy. But we get 4 issues, 4 awesome issues on the backstory of the Saint of Killers. And I might have passed it already. Either way, really awesome stuff. But Cassidy and his friendship with Jesse. Oh, here's the backstory. This is the backstory on the Saint of Killers, I believe. Yes, this is it. This is another awesome cover by Glenn Fabry, who does the whole thing. So what's the Saint of Killers? What's his role? How did he get there? And we learn a little bit more about what his life on Earth was like. He dies. He goes to hell. Hell can't really contain him. So he's brought to heaven to kind of be their man in charge of, we'll say, killing. So really awesome art in this first book. Really cool story. It ends on quite the cliffhanger. We get to learn more about Arseface and his background, and he's kind of a side character. It's from the first arc of this story, but following his story is really cool. We get a preacher special on him as well. But that is Omnibus 1. It's got some really cool extras. There was some letter pages, and I think just some art and alternate covers, or maybe some scripts. But let's dig into the second book and polish this off. All right, so here is Volume 2 of Preacher. We start off with another Preacher special. This one's called One Man's War. And all these Preacher specials are a little bit longer than a regular comic book issue and just really cool. And sometimes they've got guest artists. Like this one's done by Peter, I don't even want to attempt that last name, but the art is really cool. But we learn a little bit more about Hair Star and how he got to where he is, how he became who he is, what happened to his eye, what happened to his weird penis head. And he's just got a pretty wild arc in this story, but really cool stuff. So, as we kind of move on through this story, we get this story arc called War in the Sun, and Jesse is out to attempt some peyote mushrooms to, potentially talk with Genesis and figure out what it wants with him, what it's doing. And the Grail and Hair Star are still after him. Hair Star's got some ideas of how he wants to run the Grail versus how that fat blob Darren wants to run it. So they're out in, I can't remember. I think this is like Arizona or something. And Jesse's idea is I'm just going to go out into the desert, do this peyote, and have this conversation with Genesis, right? The offspring of this angel and demon. And he runs into the Saint of Killers, and because Jesse's really no match for the Saint of Killers. I mean, Jesse's a great fighter, a great shooter, but the Saint of Killers, his gun never misses. But he makes a deal to save him and Tulip, and we'll see the payoff of that later in this. But as he's out there, Hair Star and the Grail are after him, and something happens in this arc, pretty extreme. We learn more about the Grail and their kind of ties to politicians all over the world, and some power and ability that they have. But this book ends, and it's assumed that Jesse Custer is dead. But spoiler alert, he's the main character of this book. He does not die. But Tulip and Cassidy think that he's dead, and they go on, kind of depressed, and something happens between them that really is heartbreaking and changes what you think of some of these characters. Also, in the events of that War in the Sun issue, something happens to Hair Star, and he's found barely alive as he tries to escape this bomb that went off, and he's in a rough position here. I don't want to give away too much, but Cassidy and Tulip think that Jesse's dead. Jesse is actually alive and trying to find. There's no cell phones. This happens in like the 90s, so he's trying to find where Tulip and Cassidy are. And on his way, uh, Jesse, what happens here? Oh, so we get this arc called Salvation. And Jesse is in this small Texas town and confronts some corruption and some racism, and decides to become the sheriff of this town. He's always wanted to be a sheriff, and the sheriff's willing to give Jesse the badge, and he takes over this town. And we learn a little bit more about. Oh, this one's awesome. What is this one? This is the backstory of these two guys, TC and Jody, who work for Jesse's grandmother at this. In this, they're in this very weird kind of offshoot of Christianity, very extreme. But we get some backstory on them, and it's fantastic. And I forget who does the art on this, but it's really cool art. But in this salvation issue, Jesse becomes the, I guess, real quick, we get another preacher special. This is Arseface's special. So we get to learn a little bit more about how he becomes Arseface and what are his ties to Kurt Cobain. So Jesse, again, we're back in this story. He becomes the sheriff of this small town in Texas. He learns a little bit more about what happens to his mother, and learns that God is actually trying to stop him from finding him. So this story kind of goes on a little bit, and he decides that he's going to move on. He's not going to stay in this town. He's kind of cleaned it up as the sheriff, and he's going to go on and try to find Tulip and Cassidy. So the next arc is called All Hell's Coming, and this we see kind of what happens with Tulip and Cassidy as they're on their own, with the assumption that Jesse's dead. And Tulip eventually leaves Cassidy and goes to her best friend in, I think, New York. And surprise, surprise, that's exactly where Jesse thinks to go looking first. And they are reunited, and it's beautiful. And so Jesse discovers, some truth about Cassidy that's not very pleasant. And it really changes the friendship. Jesse allies again with the Saint of Killers on his hunt for God and trying to find out where he is. We kind of start setting up the final or the end of this story, this confrontation that's going to happen between Jesse and Cassidy and Tulip and the Saint of Killers and the Grail, is all coming to a head at the Alamo. Hairstar is now in control of the Grail, and his desire is to capture Jesse and use him as the new Messiah, because Jesse has the Word of God. A lot of nudity in this book if you haven't seen it. So the last arc in this is, of course, called The Alamo, and it's all about Jesse, finally finding God, and figuring out what this Genesis thing is doing in his head. We get the final showdown between Jesse, Cassidy, and the Grail. Something happens to Jesse. Tulip becomes a hero. She's an awesome character. Cassidy tries to redeem himself to Jesse and to you, the reader. I think his actions are just really devastating, because you really will love this character. And I don't want to give away the end of this book too much, so we'll skip ahead and just look at some of the alternate covers here by Glenn Fabry. Really, really awesome stuff. But go check out Preacher. So, Preacher, what can I say about Preacher? It's very Garth Ennis. Let's start with the art. Like I said, the 70 or so covers by Glenn Fabry that are absolutely amazing. If anything, pull those up and look at them. But if you know Garth Ennis is very Garth Ennis. Gory, bloody, very over the top. And this book is that. There's a lot of violence. There's a lot of sex. There's a lot of just extreme moments. It's very satirical of the American way of life, satirical of religion. But all that stuff and everything that you've heard about Preacher is really just top dressing. Preacher is really just an amazing story about someone on a mission to kind of reconcile their religion. It's a love story, Jesse and Tulip's love story. Jesse and Cassie, it's a story about lost friendships. And it's just an amazing story. I can't say enough about it. I thought really cool. The first omnibus, Brian K. Vaughan does the intro, and he says, the first issue of Preacher is the greatest first issue of any comic book of all time. And I'm a big Brian K. Vaughan guy, so that was really cool to read. And I also know that Garth Ennis is a big fan of Brian K. Vaughan, so really cool kind of tying those two together. But you have to check out Preacher. The omnibuses should still be available. Two beautiful omnibuses. Get online and buy them. Let me know down in the comments what you think of Preacher, and we'll see you on the next video. Thanks.
If you're looking for great deals on collected edition comics or manga, we recommend shopping at panelboundcomics.com. They offer free shipping on orders over $30, plus bundled discounts to help you save even more. And if you're shopping from Europe or the UK, comicsbugle.com offers free EU shipping and a rewards program for regular buyers. Don't forget to use our discount codes at checkout.